This is the story of Denis Kazungu, a 34-year-old man who has confessed to killing 14 people and burying them in his kitchen. From Kigali, Rwanda, Denis Kazungu's evil dealings came to light on September 2023 when his landlord reported him to the police because he was not paying up his rent. Denis Kazungu is a good-looking man who owns a spare parts shop and lived at a secluded compound in a small village called Kashikiri in Kigali, Rwanda. His house is somewhat isolated from his neighbors, like the lonely houses across the countryside in movies. Neighbors were unsure if he was married. He was mostly seen in his shop. Otherwise, one can assume in a bar or a club in search for his next victim, since most of his victims were ladies he brought home from bars and clubs to have sex with them. On 5th September 2023, he was arrested when his landlord reported him to the police because he was not paying up his rent and was hesitating to move out when his landlord told him to move. Denis didn't want to move out, probably because he knew what he had been hiding in the kitchen and they didn't want anyone finding out. The landlord involved the police. The police, upon arrival, couldn't find a common ground with Denis to move out willingly, so they decided to forcefully break into the house, and in the process of doing so, something strange happened. Denis suddenly began crying and begging. The police recounted that Denis was not begging to keep staying in the house, or was not begging for more time to pay up. One could sense some sort of fear in him as he begged, almost as if he was hiding something, as if he wanted the police to stop using force in the evacuation process. The police became suspicious and decided to dig into the matter even more. Sooner than later, Denis, who didn't know what else to do to keep them out of the house, eventually confessed that he had some skeletons in his kitchen, literally. The police, after hearing the confession, began a thorough search in the house and found a very huge hole in the floor of his kitchen that contained dead bodies. Some of the corpses were fresher than others, which would probably mean that some of his victims were killed over a year ago. Some reports say that the police discovered at least 12 dead bodies, 11 females and 1 male. But Denis, who can now be labeled as a serial killer, was allegedly known for picking female prostitutes for sex and later killing them. But there was one male body found among, and that was odd. This body was a 25-year-old young man later identified as Eric, a young man who went missing in March 2022. Denis explained that Eric was not part of the people he demanded sex from, that he was just a young man he killed just to steal his identity so that he would cover his tracks and hide his real identity. So that was his explanation on why a male body was among the women and why he had to kill Eric. I personally find it difficult to believe because Eric was 25 years old and younger than he was, so if he really wanted to steal an identity, he could have found someone in his age range, because clearly Eric was way younger than he was. But anyway, from his confession, he claims that he killed Eric just to steal his identity and not for anything else. He agreed that there were 2 other people he had killed, which included another man and another woman whose body had not been found as at this time of making this video. So according to his confession, his killings count a total of 14, with 12 of them being female and 2 of them being male. All the women he killed, he claimed, were sex workers. Not all the bodies have been found yet. It's unclear when his killing spree may have begun, but saying it is believed that one of his victims had gone missing in March 2022, it is very possible that Denis may have started his killing spree way over a year ago. Denis was eventually taken to court where he explained the reason why he was killing these women. He said he was infected by HIV by them, which was somehow absurd, because was he trying to say all the women he killed infected him or what? It could be that he took one of the sex workers home one day and later found out she had HIV and had infected him, which would lead him to take a violent approach on hating and killing other women for what had happened to him. Because since then, he could have stopped his perverted way of life, but he decided then on to continue taking these sex workers sleep with them, and later kill and bury them in his kitchen. If he claims a prostitute deliberately infected him, which made him very angry and made him do what he was doing, that would also make a person wonder, didn't he use protection in the first place? Why would you pick a sex worker and not use protection? Again, I personally think he is just an evil person who loves killing women for pleasure, a psycho who has been interred deeply in his desires to hurt these women. But the ironic thing or the sad thing about this Denis discovery or this serial killing discovery is that he should have been caught long before now, because according to Thierry Murangira, a spokesperson for the Rwandan Bureau of Investigation, he said,
"The suspect had already been arrested in July on suspicion of rape and robbery by one of his victims who was able to escape, but he was released on bail for lack of evidence."
This was what he said, which was later quoted by the local media. So it means Denis Kazungu should have been arrested long before now, because there have been signs and instances where his neighbors, who may have lived a little distance from him, realized that there was something off with this man. His neighbor had explained to the police when they came to do an interview to say that 2 of his victims had run out of his house with serious injuries, which means his neighbors knew that this man was up to something. After any of his victims escaped and reported him to the local police, though this would have been a good time to investigate this man, but on all these incidents, he was freed because of lack of evidence. So that was how they did not investigate this man on time, giving him more grace time to continue his killing and atrocities. But thinking about this clearly would mean if Denis Kazungu had paid his rent somehow that year, the dead bodies would have been piling up. Thankfully, his cap is full and has been exposed. When he showed up to court, he did not have a lawyer, and since he admitted to the killing, he was found guilty and is yet to be sentenced. Surely he is going to get the maximum sentence. Of course, because he is very mentally stable to face the full extent of the law. He committed these crimes in good health and must be given a good healthy punishment that will not only make him pay for the lives he took, but also deter others doing so to get ready because their time is next. And finally, to get justice for the families who lost their loved ones to this madman. It's scary how people are just disappearing on the street without traces of ever finding them. Surely there are more people like Denis Kazungu out there, always on the search for their next victims. And worse, if a single man took more than a dozen lives, I can't begin to imagine what a gang of people like Denis are doing now in the dark. We must all therefore be on the lookout and be very careful about the places we go and the people we surround ourselves with. This is the first video which will begin a series about unraveling some of the most brutal crimes ever committed. Please subscribe and share with us what you think about Denis Kazungu and why he could do such a thing. See you in the next video.